The Epstein files reveal that the judge involved ordered Ghislaine Maxwell to search all of her electronic devices for the word association Prince Andrew and the word dildo. Now, I know that Prince Andrew is a bit of a tool and not the sharpest one in the box, but the judge ordered it nonetheless, and Maxwell's lawyers had to comply. We don't yet know why, and we don't yet know what the results were. But the rich and infamous are all running for cover. Those that were peripatetic around news studios on just about anything else that didn't concern them. Yes, you, Lord Mandelson, Keir Starmer's prime consultant and leading advisor. That's Peter Mandelson, for the uninitiated. Now he's a lord, but once upon a time he was a bosom buddy and shopper with Jeffrey Epstein. Peter Mandelson has not said a single word about any of the kerfuffle around the Epstein files breaking all over the world this week. I wonder why not. Neither has Piers Morgan, frequently photographed with the aforementioned Ghislaine Maxwell. Usually got plenty to say, nothing to say about the Epstein files. Bill Clinton has not yet appeared on national television to say, brimming with faux sincerity, I did not have sex with that minor. But it's early days yet. This story is going to run and run. I'm not actually all that interested, you'll have to forgive me, in the sex lives of other people, but I'm deeply interested in what the Prime Minister of Israel found to talk about on his 36 visits to Jeffrey Epstein, and why the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, established a company with Jeffrey Epstein years after the Epstein child molesting, trafficking paedophile had been convicted in court of committing sexual offences against minors. That would normally put most prime ministers, former prime ministers of American allies, of Western countries, that would normally put them off the close company of Jeffrey Epstein. On the contrary, it seems to have attracted the attention of Ehud Barak, and I'm wondering why. Aren't you interested in where the tapes are that were collected and deposited in the multiple homes of Jeffrey Epstein, where there were secret cameras everywhere, particularly in the bathrooms, Andrew, particularly in the massage parlors, particularly in the bedrooms where the rich and famous presumably slept, and maybe more than slept. These tapes are presumably in the hands of the FBI. When will the American people get to see them? When will the people of the United States, indeed the people of the world, get to know what's on the tapes, who's on the tapes, with whom, doing what to, with whom? These are legitimate questions to which there are as yet no answers. As I say, they're welcome to blank out the private parts of Ehud Barak, probably an unimpressive sight. But I want to know what Ehud Barak was talking to Epstein about. I want to know what the former Prime Minister of Israel had to do with this sex offender. I'm also mildly interested in what could possibly have attracted Lord Peter Mandelson, who famously plays for the pink team and cannot have been much interested, if at all, in the bevy of beauties around Jeffrey Epstein's swimming pool. I better not say any more on that. The truth is These rich and powerful people, some of them still very powerful. Mandelson could scarcely be more powerful. He's the #1 advisor to the leader of the opposition, who looks set to be the next Prime Minister of Britain, although a week is a long time in politics, and it's 52 weeks possibly until the British general election. But if Keir Starmer wins, then Lord Mandelson is but a heartbeat away from the Prime Minister of Britain. When Starmer was asked, didn't Peter Mandelson have questions to answer about his close and long association with Jeffrey Epstein? Starmer, the leader of the opposition, answered, "I know no more than you know." Well, why don't you know more than we know, Starmer? Don't you have a responsibility to know if your chief advisor was committing sex crimes on his visits to the sex criminal Jeffrey Epstein? Don't you have a duty to know more than we do? What kind of answer is that from potentially the next Prime Minister of Britain? Bill Clinton likes them young. Well, is the Pope a Catholic? Do bears defecate in the woods? I suppose the question is, how young is young, Bill? And did young mean illegally young? Bearing in mind the different ages of consent within the United States, never mind in the misnamed Virgin Islands, and a different one in London, where Prince Andrew is accused, amongst other jurisdictions, of having slept with a young girl below the age of consent in some of those places, who was moreover forced to do so, who was moreover allegedly a sex slave in the employ of Jeffrey Epstein. These are deep and dark and troubled waters, but they may not be unconnected to the political situation that we face today. After all, if Israel and Prime Minister Ehud Barak is in possession of compromat, of compromising material on the American political class, on Peter Mandelson, on the Duke of York, well, it would place Israel in a strong position, not to put too fine a point on it, in commanding the continuing feverish, fanatic loyalty of the British and American political class, wouldn't it? If these people knew that there were videotapes of them committing heinous sexual offenses against underage children in the possession of Mr. Barak, in the possession of the Mossad, well, it would buy their silence, to say the least, wouldn't it? Now, since South Africa, blessed South Africa, asked the International Court of Justice to rule that Israel is committing acts of genocide in Gaza, and to order them to cease and desist, which, if they refused, would have severe consequences for their international relations with a whole number of governments. Presumably, Joe Biden would go on kissing and cuddling Netanyahu. Presumably, Blinken also. But there are many countries in the European Union that would legally not be able to continue their relations with Israel were it found guilty of acts of genocide, were it refusing to cease and desist from those acts. There are many governments in Europe that would be legally bound to break all relations with Israel were that to happen. So God bless South Africa. You may well ask, why South Africa? Well, apart from other reasons, South Africa was a byword for apartheid. Israel is the new apartheid state. The leaders of the African National Congress, which I gave some of the best years of my life to help win their heroic struggle against that apartheid system. I was a bit part player, a minor player, but I was the only person on the left in the whole of Great Britain who traveled the length and breadth of apartheid South Africa, acting on behalf of the African National Congress. I've been disappointed many, many times over the subsequent decades at the performance of the ANC across many different issues. But I have never been more proud of the ANC, more proud of South Africa, now that they are the one country that had the balls to invoke the Genocide Convention to ensure that next week the court will begin to hear South Africa's 80-page case, which is a must-read. It is a masterpiece of jurisprudence, a masterpiece of narrative, and it makes a case which is unanswerable in the mouths of the Israeli leaders themselves. You know, Israel's very worried about the case for the reasons that I just mentioned. But how they're going to even muster an answer to the South African charges is simply beyond me, because all South Africa has done is tabulate the genocidal, frenzied statements made by Israeli government ministers, made by Israeli army officers, and clipped the video of them carrying out the very genocidal acts that they were promising, threatening to commit. So for me, this case is game, set, and match. And if the judges of the ICJ are judges at all, rather than political hirelings, if these judges care about the reputation of their court, they can do no other than to find Israel guilty. What has Israel done since South Africa tabled this case before the ICJ? Well, they've stepped up the genocide. 3 hours ago, this evening, one 2,000-pound bomb murdered 80 people in one house in Gaza. 80 people sheltering there have been wiped out, all of them from the same extended family, most of them women and children. 40% of all the people killed in the last 93 days were small children. I'm not even talking about the 17-year-olds. I'm talking about small children, babies, sucklings, in the words of Benjamin Netanyahu when he threatened, promised to wipe them all out, every man, woman, child, suckling, goat, camel, ass. He said it on television. There's no getting out of that one. Since Blinken told Netanyahu that the United States wanted to see a reduction in the civilian casualties in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, those casualties have ballooned upwards. Israel is killing anything, everything that moves. The Al Jazeera reporter in Gaza, who'd already lost his wife, his son, his daughter, his grandchildren, who had already been wounded himself, today lost the last of his sons, also a journalist, in a targeted, deliberate attack. The first casualty of war, it said, is the truth. But in truth, the first casualty of this war is the truth teller. They are hunting down those that are taking the pictures, those that are recording the footage, those that are witnessing the carnage, precisely because they know that they are guilty of genocidal acts. I'm going to say something that's very painful to me to say as a student of the Second World War. Israel is killing children faster than the Nazis in the death camps at Auschwitz and Treblinka. That is a statistical fact in the time that I have been speaking. Palestinian children have been murdered, maimed. Many will be amputated. 1,000 have already been amputated without any anesthetic. Can you even imagine such a thing? Famine. Most of the people starving in the world today are starving in Gaza, a place just a few hours flying time from here, and just a few minutes from the Elysian fields of the Israeli kibbutzim, where fruit and vegetables hang in abundance. Disease is on the march and is actually now infecting the Israeli soldiers in the Strip, which might be why they have begun to withdraw from the northern part of Gaza in significant numbers. Although that might also be because the Palestinian partisans on the ground, in their own territory, in their own midden heap, in their own rubble, in their own slums, were knocking hell out of the pampered Israeli invasion force. But don't think because they're withdrawing soldiers that means in any way a respite on this Orthodox Christmas day for the poor Palestinians trapped in the cage. Because when they're not fighting on the ground, they're doing their killing from the air. Gaza is a death camp. The guards are murdering the captives. And the world is not just looking away. The world is facilitating it. At least our part of the world. Stay tuned. This is the mother of all talk shows.